Recorded live on the turf at Mad Lab Training Studio in Eldersburg, Maryland. This is the Time to Win podcast with Alex and Dan. Now let's get this podcast started.
Brenda, we drink a lot of wine at home, right? And so Brenda likes this wine called a Côte du Rhône.
Okay, what kind of wine is it?
It's a French wine. It's from a region. Côte du Rhône is a region in the French winemaking country, and she likes the wine from there. And it's a blend, right? And she likes that. So
A red blend, I'm assuming?
It's a red blend, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I don't even know the grapes, right? But it's a nice blend, right? And it's easy drinking. You know, like a lot of people like a Pinot Noir, right? Mm-hmm. But that's not a blend. That's like a straight grape. And it's like I find it to be a little watery, a little thin for my taste. But the Côte du Rhône is like one step up from that. So my friends, they're like, oh yeah, we like Pinot Noir. And I'm like, amateurs. So I'm like, we can do much better than that. And so I had picked a couple bottles of Côte du Rhône in my mind, right?
Yeah.
And then I also like Super Tuscans, right?
Okay.
So that's an Italian wine, and
is it from Tuscany?
It is, yeah, and it's from Tuscany, and it's a relatively new thing. They basically take a Tuscan blend, and I don't even remember those grapes either. They're grapes that like most Americans don't remember, right? Like we're not mass marketed that way over here, like a Montverde or something like that.
Right.
That's a grape, you know, and so
yeah, they usually just give us the taste profile.
Yeah. And so
like
but the
oaky.
Super Tuscans are like, it's like a nice Tuscan wine, which everybody likes, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's kind of comparable to a Cabernet, but they call it a Super Tuscan by adding Cabernet Sauvignon to it, right?
Okay.
And these are all blends, right? So, you know, some of my friends, they're like, we want a Cabernet Sauvignon. And I'm like, you said that because you don't know what else to say, right? And you're trying to sound fancy. So anyway, so I picked a couple Super Tuscans, right?
Yeah.
And then I made a bit of a show of it by asking to see the Somm and saying, well, look,
what do you mean?
The sommelier.
Oh, yeah.
The wine
I
master.
didn't even know that you, I've never heard it abbreviated like that.
Yeah, the Somm.
Look at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, you really are a professional.
Yeah, hey man, welcome to Wine Culture 101. Yeah, the Time to Wine podcast.
The Time to Wine. That's actually
all you have to do is add an E for excellence, right? It's time to win, time to wine.
You're on your game today. So what does Somm say? What does one say to a Somm?
So you say, hey Somm, come on over. I want to buy a couple bottles here for the table. My friends like a Pinot Noir. I was thinking Côte du Rhône. I kind of like these guys right here. You know, what are people ordering for dinner? Somm's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. That's a really good one. I like this one better. Okay, it's in your price point. Trust you, Somm. Bring it over, right? And while you're at it, would you also bring us a bottle of this Super Tuscan, right? And we'll drink that after this Côte du Rhône, right? And if you could open it and decant it for us, and just have it waiting over here, and we'll get into it like as soon as
let it
breathe, right? I don't know if that's a thing or not. I guess it is.
Apparently it is. I was told that too.
So right, the Somm brings the bottle over. It's a nice Côte du Rhône. Like I already know what it is, right? And they pour the sample for me, right? And so I want to make a good show of it without being too much. So they pour a little bit, and I look at it, and then I swirl it a little bit, and then I sniff it, and then I swirl it again, and then I sip it. And aspirate it, like fill your mouth full of air, right? Like let it breathe.
Let it breathe.
And it was super tasty. And I'm like, let her rip, Somm. And the Somm pours everybody a glass, and we make a toast. And people lost their minds. They thought this was like such a good wine.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then we got into the Super Tuscan after that, and then we killed those two bottles, and it's time to get a third. And everybody wanted to go back to the Côte du Rhône. So
that's awesome.
So that's how my trip was.
Were they surprised? Was Mike surprised? Right, it was his surprise.
Yeah, I mean, like, was he surprised? Yes and no. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's like whenever they say, "I'm surprising you for your birthday. We're going somewhere." Inevitably,
how surprised can you be?
Yeah, inevitably, like every event for the last 7 or 8 years, they bring us along.
It includes the McClung.
Yeah, surprise, not.
I guess that's
It'd
fair.
be more of a surprise if we didn't show up.
Could be a bad surprise. Though.
Anyway, so it was a fine trip. I got home yesterday. It's when you're going on an overnighter with people. You have done this enough times. Like you have to be so on all the time that you get back and you're just exhausted. At least I am. I'm like emotionally exhausted. So we got home yesterday. I went right to bed. I took a nice long nap, and then I got up and I went out and I beat the pavement with the Warhound and had a great adventure over there. But I was toast, man. I was so tired when we got back.
Sure, that can happen.
Because you just need. It's like having little kids, man.
It depends on having little kids is exhausting.
Right. Right.
It depends who I'm with, though. Like it depends, like the friend group. Like if people I'm like real comfortable with, then I don't feel that way unless we just like we're up real late and then whatever. But if it's people that I did have to feel like I felt like I did have some responsibility and had to be on all the time, then I definitely get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because then you're really exhausted afterwards, and you're like, and it can be fun, but it's just also like, I have to like sometimes I'll go out around here, and because I feel like I represent Mad Lab all the time,
right?
Like I feel like there's always a part of me that's always like somewhat on. And I can't let that turn off. And then I have to get into those conversations. I have to get into whatever, which is fine. And I love talking about Mad Lab.
Yeah.
But you're exhausted.
Yeah. Like you were doing development when I walked in here, man. You were coaching your coaches.
I was coaching my coaches.
And, you must be pretty toast right now.
I feel pretty good. I did wake up at 3 o'clock this morning.
And? I woke up at 3 o'clock and?
I'm tired.
Come on, what did you do? I mean, you must have done something, right?
No, I was supposed to train at 5, and I did. And I trained at 5 and 6. But the dog is what woke me up. So she was like kicking at my back, and then she was slowly moving over into my side of the bed, and she was real hot. She was like, did a lot of body heat coming off of her and stuff, and I was like, geez. So then I ended up sleeping at one point at the bottom of the bed like a dog. And then I was like, I just couldn't go back to sleep. So then I just got up and I did some reading and stuff like that. So nothing exciting happened in that time span.
Yeah.
But I did wake up very early.
That's awesome. So you got a big day.
Big day for Daniel.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I don't know. As usual, I've got like a million things I want to talk about, right? I brought the clipboard. It's covered. Both sides of the paper are covered with scrawlings. And, but, like the last couple episodes, producer Mike has had like a set of like one-liners, like hard, tough questions that the universe needs to have answered.
The universe needs to have answered.
And so, like before I launch into my
I'm not sure that they're tough.
Producer Mike, do you have questions for the Mad Lab audience today?
She's so excited to see Dr. Sean. Yeah. That was real cute.
That is totally up to you guys.
Pop us one.
Do you want a deep thought or a lighthearted one?
Always a deep thought.
Yeah, we don't need any of that superficial stuff, Producer Mike.
Yeah.
We want the deep cuts always.
Although Alex does love the regular, everyday questions of.
Okay,
how are you doing? What do you do for work?
I'm pretty sure this one you guys will talk the rest of the.
How many hours?
Wait a minute, before you ask it, I'm going to go ahead and give the answer right now. Okay.
All right.
And this is what I do whenever we go to trivia night and we're not actually playing. I go up and I tell the MC, the answer to the first question is Reykjavik, Iceland. Okay. And
what is the capital of Iceland?
No, it just never is, right? Oh. It's never the question, right?
That is the capital, right?
But it's like if you have a deck of cards and you call it, you cut the deck and you call your card, Ace of Spades. Once in a while,
you'll hero.
Hit it. And when you do that, people will just love you. They'll lose their minds and they will not even know, like, what happened. How did you do that?
I like how you take that chance where you're like, all the times I'm wrong, because at one time I'm right, I will be a legend in that bar.
Yeah, and
That's something
Well-
that I approve of right away.
so we like one of our themes here is we teach you how to win hard, right?
Hard.
And winning hard, winning hard is not something you wake up every morning and you just do. Like,
No,
you don't
it's
just.
Reykjavik, Iceland in the wintertime.
It's the ace of spades when you
Yeah.
cut the deck, right?
Motorhead.
You have. That's one way to win hard.
It's one way to win home.
But you've got to be ready to fail, and you cannot ever be afraid to fail, right? Because if you're afraid to fail, you won't even take the shot,
That's
right?
true.
And you will never be a legend, right? If you're not willing to like Reykjavik, Iceland, or Ace of Spades, right?
That's fair.
So I don't know what the question is, Mike, but I'm going to go ahead and give you my answer right here, right now. For the record, it's Reykjavik, Iceland.
I'm going to go with Djibouti.
Djibouti. What's the question?
The
Mike?
question is, where would you like to go?
Wait, I thought we already did that.
We did.
That was a setup.
Oh, you
No,
ass.
this is the one that's
I
going to
fell
take
right
you a
into
while.
that. I fell right into the pit.
What are the implications of income equality on social cohesion and economic stability? And thanks to ChatGPT for this convoluted question.
Yeah,
That
that
is-
one's super easy.
What are the implications of income inequality? Oh. All right.
Social cohesion and economic stability. That's
pretty easy.
That's the easiest question we're going to.
That's why every dynasty falls apart, isn't it? At the essential root of it.
Okay, you can take that approach. I was going to take a completely different approch. You need something to do with your hands, all right? If you had a cigarette right now, you wouldn't be touching your
Well,
money.
that would cure all my issues for sure.
Dan, I smoked cigarettes like I was 2 packs a day for like a
God dang.
couple of years, right?
What made you quit?
I quit cold turkey in 1982.
Because of economic inequality?
No, no. I just quit because it was the wrong thing to be doing. Right.
That's a good reason to
Yeah,
quit.
the
Was
lights
there a
came.
catalyst?
I was at basic training for the Army, but we had plenty of opportunities to smoke
Sure.
down there, and so I just was like, "This is stupid. This is a waste. I'm clearly addicted to cigarettes. I'm off. I quit. This is stupid." So I just quit. And I'm hardwired for that kind of thing. I'm happy to say now. Let's see, it was 1982, so 42 years.
What was the month?
I went down there in September, so it was probably October or November.
Because it would have been April. It would have been right when I was born
Yeah.
that you quit. And then I could have said it was because of me.
No, it was in the later part
Dan
of the
Gilbert
year.
comes in this world.
But-
Alex quits cigarettes.
Yeah, I was just like, cold turkey, I quit. And so here I am 42 years later, and I've got it down to like 1 or 2 Nick Fits a day now,
Okay.
right? Like even just saying, man, you should smoke a cigarette. I'm like, yeah, I should too. That sounds really good.
It was your idea.
Yeah. So anyway, social income inequality, right? Okay. Let's start at the beginning of recorded history.
Okay.
Let's go back, I don't know, what, 8,000 years, something
Yeah,
like that, right? That's a
sure.
good number. That's 5,000, 8,000, right? And we keep getting better, okay? We keep getting better. We invented language and the alphabet. We invented like agriculture, and we invented
Yeah, we were starting to do agriculture right around then.
yeah,
Or a little
yeah,
after, maybe.
Yeah, we learned to
Although that timeline keeps getting pushed back.
yeah, but okay. But the point is, whenever you want to start, whenever you want to hit the start button on civilization, we have always had income inequality. Okay. Yet, when you look at the population, the human race as a whole, we just keep getting better. Okay. And we tend to approach history from the perspective of everything that went wrong, right? Like, we had income inequalities, and therefore we had a war, and these civilizations collapsed. But if you take the long view, and those are all true, but there's a lot of reasons why we have wars, okay? And there's a lot of reasons like dynasties collapse.
Do you think we could? Sorry, go ahead.
But if you were to look at human history as a whole and say, well, what is the one thing that runs through it all? It's income inequality and social cohesion, and yet societies still cohedes, right? Like families stay together. And yeah, like if you look at any one family or one society or something like that, you can chart the rise and fall. But if you look at humans as a whole, man, it just keeps getting better. And I'm saying like this may be counterintuitive, but I'm going to say income equality and has zero impact on all of that.
On the long term, okay, I definitely get that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take this actually back to the same time, even before that. So when we were like, when there was like Homo sapiens versus Neanderthals versus Homo erectus and everything else out there. So one of the things that they say that separate us,
Interspecies competition?
yes, interspecies competition. So one of the things they say that separate us was Homo sapiens' ability to gossip. So because this is very, I know, it's
okay,
a whole,
I'll roll with it.
So because we had like a care of like who is lying to who's cheating on whom, who's stole from or whatever, one of the things that it did is it was almost like an internal way of keeping people from gaming the system, right? Where like you might have, let's say you have some chimpanzees that can't do that. And then as they get into bigger groups, you have males that will just be like, well, just because I can, I will take this food, I will take these females, I'll do whatever, right? Mm-hmm. But because you have opinions and you have talk and persuasion, that while it still does happen, apparently happens less, so that you're less apt to have your society fall into itself, right? So then another thing that's brought up is that, again, to bring it over to chimps, like apparently their social circles, there's not usually social circles that are bigger than 50, like around 50.
Yeah, critical mass.
Right, because then it starts to fall apart because they can only trust those that are either their mates or their immediate family.
Right.
Other than that, there's no trust, so the society falls apart. Because we are able to create more trust and we're able to work with somebody, like we can work with each other, we're not related, right? Then we can also work with somebody right outside, could walk inside right now, talk to us about something, and we might work with them on something, right? Where that doesn't happen in other species. Because of that, we're able to travel and like move around in larger social structures, and we have the ability of numbers and we have the ability of brain power and working together so that we can advance faster.
But we certainly do not have income equity or equality.
Well, this brings me to my next point. So
right.
Because of that, I still think that there's still a critical threshold that you can get to even with that. And I think you start to see that income inequality. And then because there's that income inequality, for example, if you have like 50% of the people that have this, 50% of the people don't. Now it's 40-60. Now it's 20-80. Now it's like 90-10. Now you start to have a problem because now you're gonna have 90% of people of like your knowledge base of like just your population is starting to get angry. Then it's gonna cause problems. There's gonna be revolts. People are gonna believe whatever. You're starting to have like civil war on itself in the societies, and I think that's what happens. And I think that income inequality is a resource inequality is the first thing that you see. And I think that's also what leads to all of that. But I think it's because of too big of a social circle. It's just a theory I came up with.
Yeah,
right
I'm going to go against you on that one, Dan.
Well,
I'm going to say when I was a kid growing up, we had a term for income equality. Yeah, we called it communism.
So I do agree. There should not be like, I don't agree that everybody should be just given whatever, right? But I do think that, as for example, like if we were to create a community, right, and we created a community of 10 people we know, we would all likely do a good amount for that community, and everybody would have their place. If we did 20 people, we have less of a chance that we're going to be happy with everybody's involvement in the community. If we have 100 people, we have even less of a chance. So we have 1,000 people, and we definitely have less of a chance.
Yeah, but what about income equality? Right,
Well,
that was the basis of the question.
Well, it didn't ask me if I agree with either one of them. It just said what are the consequences, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So good one. That was a good question.
It was a very good question.
We've seen two sides of it here. Dan says yeah. Alex says no.
I just said that there's ramifications. I just said that I think that's the point you start to see when you see extreme resource inequality is when you see like a direct society fall apart.
Yeah.
And I think usually that's because there's too many people, and then there's like like it's harder to keep checks and balances on anybody, and then eventually, just because of how we are as humans, resources are going to get pulled to one thing. And I do also, on the other side of things, I think fighting against that and being like, oh, we'll just have this large society and we'll just pull the resources all equally, I think that has its own giant consequences as well, for sure.
Absolutely, right.
So that was only my point. I did it. I kind of took I didn't really take a stand on either way in a shitty way. I just wanted to educate the public on something.
Well, okay, so Dan, I'm going to give you, since you did not take a stand on either one, I am going to assign you a homework assignment today.
I'm good at those.
Yeah, the record shows you favorably, right?
Yep.
History will remember you as the guy that always did his homework. Yep.
Just like when I was in grade school.
Okay, The Whiskey Speech
Okay.
by Soggy Sweat. Okay, that's it. The Whiskey
You gotta write
Speech.
that down for me, Mikey. Mikey's got it notated.
Okay.
Okay.
And that's you read it, think about it, and I'd like a 100,000 word essay.
100,000
I mean, yeah.
Say it
just
again, by the way.
Yeah, cite it again.
whiskey
The Whiskey Speech
by Soggy Sweat.
by Noah Soggy Sweat.
Who caught? Why did he have the nickname Soggy?
Yeah, Dan, that's something that's lost in the mists of time, my friend.
Hopefully,
We
it's
just
because it's
don't
not
know.
as boring as milk toast. Milk toast is soggy.
No, you'll love this one. This one
believe
is one of the better pieces of rhetoric and oratory that I've ever heard.
Wow,
And it's too bad we don't teach those anymore in school.
I would agree with that too.
Okay, so that was the question from producer Mike and from the universe that wanted an answer to the question. I've got something else on my mind today, Dan.
That's weird.
Yeah, I know, right? A guy that's usually so vacant and thoughtless.
Yeah.
But something
Vapid
happened.
even.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
vapid, right?
Just kidding. I just wanted to use the
clueless.
word.
Yeah, it's a good one, right?
Thanks.
So I got to thinking the other day. I was on this canoe trip, and my buddy Dr. Paul, the wingman extraordinaire.
I love Dr. Paul.
He's
Good man.
awesome.
He'll be on here at some point.
I
We'll get
hope.
him on here.
Yeah. And so we're talking about something, and he reminded me of an old comedy sketch that we had listened to as teenagers years and years ago. And it was Mr. Rogers was interviewing a bass player for a jazz combo, like the upright bass. And this guy, he's talking to Mr. Rogers, and it was hilarious.
Like Mr. Rogers in
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I mean it was a comedy skit, right?
Okay.
But so he starts talking about, like, he says, the bass player says, I figure with all those notes that I'm sending out there into space, I wish I could get paid for every note I play instead of just getting paid a flat rate, because with all those notes that I'm sending out there into space, man, I'm working cheap. I thought that was so funny. But then I got to thinking, Dan, I talk too much.
Okay.
I talk too much. And, I think I need to do an experiment someday and find out how many words a day I say.
Okay.
Because I think it might be too many.
I think I'd probably have you beat, though.
Maybe, but
Because I talk to myself. I talk to my dog all the time.
we can come back to you in a minute, all right?
Yes.
But I got to thinking, not only how many words a day do I say, I wonder if I could attach a value to them, how valuable those words would be. Like if I said less words, would the content go up in value?
Like a supply and demand kind
I
of thing?
don't know. I'm just thinking at some point I say so many words, they start losing their value over time.
Well, I think-
and maybe okay, so we went out with Barbara and Mike this weekend.
Yeah.
And this one really brought the issue to a head because those guys talk, right? And the ratio of words, like the words spoken by those guys versus the words spoken by me or me and Brenda, right? It was just so skewed. It was not 10 to 1. It was 500, 1,000 to 1. I mean, it was the conversation was so overloaded on one side.
You gave him too much wine.
I don't know. Like nobody was even hungover, you know. Although Mike tends to stop drinking or stop talking when he's had a lot to drink. But even then,
Didn't drink enough.
maybe he didn't drink enough. I don't know. But I got to thinking about that, and I wonder what the ratio of words are that I speak out loud versus the words I listen to every day. Okay, what do you think, Dan? You want to go ahead and run with that one?
Phew, I don't know.
I think okay. Let me.
I think that's an important thing to think about, though.
Yeah.
Because that's something that I've thought about even fairly recently. Because they talk about like exactly what you just said: less words, more value. Because then when you speak up, it's the same thing if you have if you had a parent that never really said anything, like never got mad at you for anything, and all of a sudden they're like, "No, don't do that." And just that line, never heard it before. You haven't heard it in forever. All of a sudden they say that, and you're like, "Oh shit." Versus somebody that's always like, "Don't do that," da 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 da, and then none of the words have any meaning anymore.
Right.
I think that carries over into anything else, right? If you say something philosophical, but you're always talking about something philosophical, maybe it doesn't have as much meaning as where all of a sudden you interject in a conversation that you've never interjected in, and you're like, "Hey, da 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 da." But maybe not. Not if you have as many interesting things to say as we do.
I'm
just kidding.
No.
But I do think you have a point.
I don't think you're kidding at all. I think you're spot on. We have a lot of interesting and important things to say here, and that's a tough one too, right? Like if you're consciously trying to be a strategic listener, but you also have like really top shelf content that is important to get out there. Sometimes you got to say it, right?
Well, welcome to having ADHD, because that's like what my whole life is. I always have to like dial back and be like, chill out, Dan. You don't really need to say this now. So I actually have that battle with myself all the time.
Well, and then you brought up the point like talking to yourself, right? Okay, those are extra words, right?
Yeah.
And like talking to your dog. Like I talk to my dog constantly. Right?
I talk to my dog constantly.
It's the dumbest thing.
Yeah, because Jules will be upstairs and she'll be like, are you talking to me? And I'm like, no, I'm talking to Iggy. And I will talk to her like normal, like this. Like I'll just be like, and this and this and this.
Yeah.
Whatever. And it's just like, why am I doing this?
And so it gets even worse now. Now that we've got people thinking like, oh my gosh, Alex said he talks too much. I wonder if I talk too much. I wonder if I don't listen enough. And yeah, listening is hard.
Listening is hard.
That's why I'm so exhausted coming back from that trip. I just spend a lot of time listening to people, right? And
I would say that is exhausting.
It is. It's so hard. It takes me physical effort to keep my mouth shut.
A lot of times, so I was at a party
a
couple weeks ago. So we're at this party, and we're sitting there, and this guy tells a bunch of us probably the most boring story I've ever heard in my life. Right? To where the point where there's always, the stuff that a lot of times I want to interject with is like comedy. Like somebody will say something, it'll spur something in my brain, and I want to get a like quick one-liner in there. But I try to tell myself not to do that all the time because it's, if you're doing it a lot, it's disrespectful. Right? And I don't want to do that, right? I just pops in my head. But Alex, this was one of the most boring things I've ever heard. I could sum it up to you in probably 4 sentences.
Yeah.
And it was a 25-minute story on it, and that's not an exaggeration.
Right.
And there were so many instances during it where I was like, "Oh, here's a zinger I could put in there." But
Yeah,
I
know.
listened.
And you're like holding back so hard, you're like shaking. At the end of the conversation.
And one of my friends is with me, and he's got the kind of the same brain. It was Logan was with me. Kind of the same brain. And I looked over when I was like, I could tell he was doing the same.
Yeah.
Neither one of us, to our credit, said anything. But I was like, geez, man, this is tough.
So those are the words, right? Like the words that you're listening to and the words that you're saying back. What about, and the words that you're talking to yourself, right?
Yeah.
And the words that you're saying to the dog.
Yes.
And the words that you're saying to other people on the road when you're out driving and they cut you off, right? Yeah. But then here's the big one. The words that you say silently in your own mind. Like, do you have that
inner
silent
monologue?
Yeah, inner monologue.
For sure.
And it never ever stops, right?
No, it never stops. Which is not. I don't know if it never stops, because there's some instances in life where I feel like at least it slows down, right? And those to me is like where true relaxation comes from. somebody's dead. Where true relaxation comes from, I get it, like one of the few times that I get it is if I'm looking at like moving water.
Oh yeah,
Even
yeah,
still
yeah.
water, even
I
like
was just thinking about that. Yeah,
lakes, rivers,
right.
the ocean. Like I can like sit there in nice, even in bad weather, and just like
turns
look
the
at
noise
it.
off.
Yeah. Sometimes fire. Like sometimes if I'm looking at a fireplace or a candle or like something like
Campfire.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sometimes also I would say like if you can look up and look at like just pure night sky without any kind of cloud cover or anything, where you get a lot of stars and stuff.
Right.
Just because of the just like the size of it, the scale makes you. Everything else is not worth thinking about.
Right.
Right.
So you know what, Dan? I would go so far as to say that act of turning off the internal dialogue and gazing at the stars or looking at the fire, that's a form of listening.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And producer Mike, this is not an original thought. So you can look up the quote from Thomas Merton. Okay. Thomas Merton, who he was a monk actually, and he wrote this wonderful. He wrote a ton of books, but he wrote this wonderful piece about sitting in the woods listening to the rain. Okay, and so yeah, we'll pull that up and we'll read that
Merton.
back to Thomas Merton.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, that's it. So he used to say that he said the rain was just this beautiful speech. Just pouring down, asking nothing, expecting nothing, and it's just talking. And as long as it talks, I'm going to sit here and listen. I can't say it the way he said it, but it was beautiful. So
That is pretty cool.
So now you've got well, maybe 2 homework assignments, right? The whiskey speech, and now Thomas Merton on the rain. Okay,
We're getting there.
and so
You're loading me up here, though.
I know, but I mean, like, I'll do the homework for you.
Well, I'd love to hear that.
Because
I wish I would have heard more of that.
Yeah, I mean, did
past.
you have a buddy that used to help you do your homework?
No one ever did my homework for me.
Oh,
So, I know.
Well, yeah, me either. But I wish I had someone. So I'm going
I
to be
did
that
do
someone.
some people's homework for them.
Yeah.
And which was, which is kind of an odd thing because I never really did my own homework a lot of times, but sometimes I would do other people's because I felt like that's when I was good at stuff because I felt like I have a responsibility now. Somebody asks me for help, I need to help them. But help yourself.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, it's always more fun to like clean someone else's kitchen than it is clean your own
Sure.
kitchen, right?
'Cause,
you could go
somebody
over for
really
dinner and-
appreciates it,
Oh
right?
yeah, totally. So
Where you clean your own kitchen, it's just a freaking chore. That.
yeah, and it's seldom appreciated.
Yeah. True. Yeah. True.
Anyway, so that's my premise, Dan. I think I talk too much. I try really hard to listen. It's a lot of work, but still, even with that, I feel like I really need to dial it back. Okay, there you go. That's my premise.
That's in my hat. That's in my head all the time. Every conversation I have, that's in my head because I do want to interject.
Yeah, I know, right? Like, but I was telling this to my daughter, and she said, "Oh, I know exactly what you mean, Pop," because like I get into arguments with myself, and I play both sides of the arguments. And sometimes I win, and sometimes I lose. Arguments with myself, and I'm like, "Oh my God, you poor thing. That must be brutal."
That is brutal. I would agree with that.
So I've got a couple other things to talk about today. I don't know, like we're probably 40 minutes into it here.
Pretty close.
Do you have another quick question from the universe out there?
But a
Producer
deep
Mike?
one. I can answer a deep question in 2 words.
Not one of these cheesy things like income equality and stuff.
Do you really want a deep one, or do you want one that you're going to get answered in 5 minutes or less?
Oh, a deep one. All of them are deep ones. We just can answer it in 5 minutes or less because we're that good.
All right. So, audience, producer Mike, I think is going to put it up on the screen here. There it is. Oh yeah, easy. That's hardly deep at all. Let me start this one. Okay, I'll read the question for anybody that's listening. Technology, : what's the one tech gadget or app you couldn't live without, and what makes it so indispensable? I already got the answer.
What is it?
Okay, air conditioning. Pardon me? That's not a tech gadget?
That's not a tech gadget.
Yeah, man. Okay, so if you would...
appliances
if
don't
you,
count.
Right, that's an appliance.
P.
Well, wait a minute. No, I'm sticking with the answer. The terms were not stated. We can't go back and add new terms after I've given an answer.
You would say your
But you
air
also
conditioner
can't
is a
make up your
gadget?
own terms.
Yeah. Hey, that was the question. I gave an answer. My answer got invalidated. I said air conditioning. I'm ready to die on that hill. But Dan, since I got shot down, what do you have to say? Tech
don't
or
know.
gadget or app?
Man, that I could not live without. One of the first things that I would like go to, if I was looking at an app, I would say my Spotify app. Because I just think that being able to have music anytime that you want it,
Yeah.
without any kind of crazy gadget that you need to play, like you don't need a record player, you don't have to play like I must play this album and that's it.
Yeah.
I must play like this mix CD or this mixtape. I was telling somebody the other day, like that's one thing that like I love how technology has pushed that thing. Right?
Yeah.
If I'm looking at something that's not like life necessary or anything.
I don't know, like gene therapy. That's a technology. Like I don't know. Maybe we're using the term technology.
It says
differently.
like a gadget
Yeah.
that you can, or an
No,
app,
okay.
gadget or an app.
Okay, then. Okay, so with these terms, then I'm going to take this one. It's still super simple. Absolutely nothing. Like I am ready to give it all up and walk away from it. Right? I've been there. I've done that. I hate being a slave to stuff. Right?
Yeah, I would say that if I didn't have my phone, and I hate to say this, that would be bad. However, if we could get rid of all phones, I'd be fine.
Yeah, I read that question as like a technology if it were eliminated.
It was eliminated.
forever.
Yeah. So then I wouldn't even want to keep my phone. But then I don't know how I would keep my Spotify app.
So
But I could definitely do away with phone.
Well,
I would do away with it.
you know if we didn't have the phone for music, you'd spend a lot more time hanging out with people that play music
Yeah,
or sing,
right.
Or you do it yourself.
I'd be
right?
fine with that.
Yeah,
I'd get rid of that. I don't know if there is like a tech gadget that, as long as we were eliminating it, right? I would. There's not really one that I really would. That I really.
What about
would wanna
insulin?
keep.
That's a tech, like synthetic insulin.
But I don't use it.
I know
think it's
you don't,
I
but
think
that's
it's super
life-changing.
important. It is
Yeah,
life changing.
Antibiotics.
Yeah, I think all that's super important.
So the reason I went straight for air conditioning is I didn't make that up myself, right? I'm spitting back an answer that I had heard some years ago. You're familiar with Lee Kuan Yew, right? He was the Prime Minister of Singapore, the father of Singapore, right? And
I'm
Singapore,
familiar with Singapore.
yeah, and Singapore is a really cool country. It's situated
port.
smack dab on the equator, okay, right at the end of the Malay Peninsula. There's 4 major ethnic groups that occupy that territory or that live there, and they live peacefully together, right? And Singapore was like a marsh, and like a British protectorate or British territory at some point. And it was brutal, you know. It was like really not a cool place to be. And now it is one of the coolest places to be in the world, because Lee Kuan Yew and the founders of Singapore like created a society out of thin air, right? And they said, this is what it's going to be like, right? And there's going to be these rules, and there's not going to be any exceptions, like, you know, drug dealers, right? Death penalty. Right, that's it. You spit your chewing gum out on the sidewalk or you litter, you're going to get hauled into the police and you're going to get beaten. And you're going to receive a beating that you will not forget for the rest of your life. I mean, it's like a pretty hard society if you're not a rule follower. But if you're a rule follower, it's paradise. Okay? Anyway, so Lee Kuan Yew was like, he was asked this question, you know, what is the greatest technology? And, you know, people like Bill Gates were being asked, and, you know, like, you know, I don't know, like influential people, smart people. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, antibiotics and space travel and airplanes and stuff. And Lee Kuan Yew was like, air conditioning, yeah, hands down. Like, we couldn't survive in Singapore without air conditioning. It makes a part of the world that is basically uninhabitable, not just habitable, but productive, right? And not just productive, but productive on a world level. like a world-class scale.
Yeah, it's one of the
Right?
biggest ports in the world, right?
Yeah, and so here we are sitting in the beautiful palatial studios of Mad Lab Performance.
Palatial.
Okay, live from the turf, and we're bathing in beautiful air-conditioned air. And we're all going to walk outside. We're going to take that short but brutal walk to our cars, and most people are going to flip on the air conditioning, and they're going to go home to their air-conditioned homes, and they're going to let that thing run all night because it's hot outside, right? So anyway, I think that's we take a lot of that kind of stuff for granted.
Oh, sure.
And that's difficult, right? And when we take stuff for granted, Dan, I believe that is when societies start falling apart, right? When we start like saying the things that we feel like we should be getting for free. Like when I was a kid growing up, television was free, right? There wasn't a lot of it, right? There were like 3 channels and they were in black and white.
Yeah.
But it was free. And for the most part, like network television is still free. You have to put up with a lot of commercials because it's actually not free. But, like the whole idea of like, paying to watch a streaming service, like, it's easy to take it for granted that stuff is free, right?
Sure.
Like you walk into an air-conditioned shopping center and you say, oh, yeah, of course it's air-conditioned. If it's not, you're going to like leave, right? We take a lot of that stuff for granted, and it's weird. So yeah. Anyway, that's me. I'm air conditioning. Sorry, that was a super long answer, but I knew the answer, Mike. I knew the answer, and yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to get.
I didn't think this was going to be a very short answer.
I know because
for
I
both
talk
of
too
you.
much, right?
If it was something like that, to me, it would be like, I would say sewage.
Sewage. That's awesome. Yeah,
That's real important.
Yeah,
It's
municipal.
real important in health. It's important in everything, convenience, everything.
Yeah,
That would be like a septic system.
Yeah, like
Guys.
have you have you traveled in the third world much? Like there is no septic infrastructure, right? And it's awful.
And it causes lots of problems.
Yep. It pollutes the drinking water. People die.
Yeah.
Diseases everywhere.
Yeah,
It's
so for me, that
terrible.
would be like a big one. That's a big one.
And it's funny because that was until 100 years ago. Yeah, maybe 150 years ago. That was the norm.
Yeah.
Right? And every place was like there was no civilization. It was a cold, hard world, man.
Sure.
And now it's nice. And that's
Now
why,
it's nice.
And that's why I'm saying and income equality or equity has nothing to do with that. We still keep advancing. Okay? It's not fair, it's not kind, but probably at the end of the day it doesn't matter. All right, that's my answer. Shout outs.
That is it.
Shout outs.
Well, I'm going to shout out to this cold, hard world. I'm just kidding. Cold, cruel
It's
world.
cold. It's cruel. Dan, I want to give a shout out to the trainers at Mad Lab. Like I had a friend who basically arrived at Mad Lab 2 years ago in a wheelchair.
God bless
No,
him.
actually, if I remember correctly, this
Gurney.
person arrived on a gurney in a body bag.
Yes.
Okay, and one of the trainers at Mad
Technically
Lab
dead.
unzipped the body bag and said, "He's not completely dead. I think we can work with this one."
Not quite dead yet.
And they got him back on his feet, and this formerly like nearly dead person, not completely dead person, is now up and moving around and enjoying their best life ever, thanks to the trainers at Mad Lab.
Wow.
Right? So if
I
you,
always like to hear that.
if you're listening out there and you think your case is hopeless and you think it's all over, it's not. All you got to do is walk in the door at Mad Lab and say help, and they will do it. They will help you and they'll change your life. Right? And that's no bunk.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm going to do 2 shout-outs.
Hit it.
One to my friends at the Locomotive. If you're looking for good drinks, great friends, great food, better atmosphere, go to the Locomotive down on Main Street, Sykesville. That's the place to be. We're there all the time, too. I might keep people away, but we do love it there. So I encourage anybody to go out and try it if they haven't already. And if you have tried it, go there, stay there. I also want to shout out CNA Auto. Again, if you have anything happen to your car, it goes underwater, it explodes, tires fall off, or you just need some general maintenance or you hear some weird noises that you don't know what's going on, go check out CNA Auto. Tell them that your friends at Mad Lab sent you. They're in Eldersburg right off of Route 26, Liberty Road. And I would say also, Alex, you're the man.
No, don't say it.
You're the man.
No, don't
You
say
know
it.
you are.
I'm not. I'm nobody. I'm just
Some.
I'm
Come
just
here.
some guy that talks too much.
Hardly.
Anyway, thanks, Dan. Appreciate everything you're doing out there.
Thank you. Where are we going?
We're going straight to the top. You know why?
It's time to win.
It's time to win, baby.
That's right. Thank you, guys.